Whenever I go visit my property, I take a can of paint and a hammer because all of those things we just mentioned qualify as reasons why you can stay in the property and have it still be considered an investment property.
Hello, hello. Ginny Bolling here with Pivotal REI, the real estate investing podcast. And today we have Dave Foster from 1031 Investor with us. And thank you, Dave, for coming on. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's awesome to be here today.
Well, I understand you have been in this space a long, long time. And so I think we'll have some very productive information to talk about. And it's such an important topic people forget about all the time. And especially people that have multiple properties. Oh my gosh, or even one property. It's so much wealth building potential that people really need to remember it, right?
You know, the longer you stretch out that word long time, the older I feel, Jenny. But yeah, it's such an important concept. And I learned it the hard way. So many people have. But a long time ago, in the middle of my growing pains at the School of Hard Knocks, a mentor said, Dave, the measure of wealth isn't how much you make, it's how much you keep after you make it. So from that moment on, we've been really fixed on shutting that back door and keeping taxes with you instead of paying them to the government is certainly one big way to do that.
So it sounds like you just said the takeaway in before I asked for it. So let me have you go ahead and say it straight out.
And the takeaway that I was going to give you at the end,
Yeah. What's your takeaway for the listener?
what we're going to end up talking about today is hopefully going to distill in people the fact that wealth isn't built in a second, can be lost in a second, but it's not built in a second. And the only way it's built in your lifetime is if it's allowed to compound, which means it has to stay with you. And the 1031 exchange is a great way to keep taxes with you over the course of time so that that compounding can work. And then the long game of being a real estate investor will end up with you being successful beyond your imagination.
Well, so that was a very interesting way you said that. You want the taxes to stay with you. So are you saying that means you don't pay it to the government, you keep using it to invest?
That's exactly right. That's
That's
exactly right.
interesting to say it that way, right? Yeah.
One of the most telling examples that we'll use with our clients in the initial phases of educating them is a four transaction model. So we're not talking about these real estate investors that are buying and selling everything. Four transactions, two investors. They each made $100,000 on their first property, but one of them does a 1031 exchange, which most people have heard about, but still kind of it's hoodoo voodoo, right? What it's going to do is let them keep the tax dollars and invest it in new real estate. So they made $100,000. They could put 20% down on a $500,000 piece of property, right? The other investor pays the tax. And let's say the federal and state capital gains rate's 20%. Well, that means they only have $80,000. So they can put 20% down on a $400,000 house. So in that first transaction, the investor doing the 1031 exchanges can buy $100,000 more real estate. If you fast forward 5 years, that 100,000 becomes several hundred thousand. The third transaction in year 10, investor doing 1031 exchanges has $1 million more in real estate than the investor who pays the taxes. Now, they still owe the taxes. We're not going to try, they're not going away yet. But, and then you wait 10 more years and do the last transaction, and investor A doing the 1031 exchanges will have $12 million of real estate. The investor who pays the taxes like a good little soldier has 3.5 million of real estate, which Nobody's going to cry for that person, but who would you rather be?
Right? I've seen that demonstrated in many ways, and yes, it's huge. It is huge.
And we chose to live it for ourselves even before I started doing it for clients. And it's what allowed us to carve out a life of raising our four children on a 50-foot sailboat, living off of a vacation rental portfolio without paying a penny in tax, and doing it in 10 years. We made it happen in 10 years because the tax stayed with us. So I'm a big believer. I'm a big fan. I'm a big user.
Right. I forgot about that sailboat story. Yes. That's a big deal. How many years were you doing that?
We lived aboard full time for 10 years.
Yeah, that's huge. And how many kids?
For, tell you what,
How
they were
big was
like,
that boat?
it was not big enough. I'll tell you that for sure. There were kids draped everywhere. But you know what? It was the time of our lives. We
How
had
old
a
were they when
ball.
you went?
Uh, two of them were born while we were on the boat. Well, welcome to close quarters, right? And the other two were 3 and 4 when we moved aboard.
Wow. Amazing. Yeah. Gutsy too.
My father-in-law had a different word for it, but that's okay. He came around.
All right. Well, so tell us how you got what your company is now and what you offer people every day.
Yeah. So that was, I mean, our success was the impetus for us and the fact that 1031 exchanges are just not taught anywhere. They're not advertised by the IRS anywhere. And for decades, were only available to people with high enough priced attorneys that they could make it happen and learn that the secret. We saw a niche saying, wait a minute, this worked for normal folks like us. Can we help others to do what we did? And so that's why we started to do that for others and for people who don't have access to all of those highly priced attorneys who can research the law at $600 an hour. And that's how the 1031 investor came to be. It's really an education portal where we help strategize, we help educate, we help steer people, and then we actually help them perform 1031 exchanges so they can keep the tax dollars for themselves.
So walk us through what that looks like. If somebody calls you and says, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing a 1031," tell me the steps.
First thing I will do, and this is, I know it's so easy just to spout off the 6 requirements and this kind, but the first thing, Jenny, I ask everybody is first, tell me your why. And they go, well, what are you talking about? I want to sell a property. No, no, no. Why do you want to sell that property? Because with the 1031 exchange and what you know about my philosophy from my what takeaway is that this is a very strategical, long-term thinking endeavor to do right. And the why of why you're selling is going to determine the what you're going to buy, the where you're going to buy it, the how you're going to buy it, and the how you're going to use it. And those are so key. And yet the 1031 exchange, the tool itself will fit into any aspect of that. Because all the 1031 exchanges, someone calls up and says, I think I want to do this. What is it? The 1031 exchange allows you to sell real estate that has been highly appreciated or that you have highly depreciated and taken the tax write-offs on. Sell that and go buy new investment real estate of any type, anywhere, of any number. And by following the process, you get to indefinitely defer paying the tax and the depreciation recapture. So, what's very common right now are all of these people that bought their first rental in, 2013, 14. They fixed it up. Well, that 50-year-old property is now 65 years old. And oh my gosh, I didn't realize I'd have to put a new roof on it. And if you're cash flowing $500 a month, say on a piece of property, making $6,000 a year on that, and you have to put a roof for 40,000 on there, that just wiped out 4 years of cash flow in an instant. So that's a great why to sell before that has to happen. Well, so if that's my why, then what am I going to buy? I want to get out of capital expense. So I'm going to look at newer properties. I'm going to look at properties that have a better repair record. I'm going to look at properties where maybe they're in a pooled management system. So, for instance, a condo where a lot of the work is going to be covered by the condo or the townhome association. Those are the types of things that you can look at. What if I mentioned I had two of my kids while I was on the boat, but you're starting to have a family and you're building memories and you realize that you're working for your real estate portfolio instead of it working for you. So if that's a why to simplify and give yourself more time to spend with your family, then the what and the how and the where is going to be maybe a vacation rental in the Smoky Mountains where you can generate income, but also use it some for personal use. So all the way along your journey as a real estate investor, you're able to capitalize on where the real estate market is, and you're able to maximize your enjoyment of where you are in your personal real estate life cycle, and use the 1031 exchange to keep the taxes working for you. Because ultimately, the goal is to, there's a poster somewhere, I've got to find it again, where the guy says, my view of death is I want to slide into heaven on my Harley with the tank on empty, yelling, what a ride. And so we're trying to end up right where we want. But the 1031 exchange allows you to keep all of that tax deferred and working for you till you die. And then the greatest gift of all, although you got to die to get it, is that you get a reset. Your heirs inherit that property, and all of the tax, all the depreciation recapture goes away. Your last act by holding on to it was to give your heirs a legacy of wealth to then start their own investing on. But see how it's got to start with the why first? Because otherwise you're going to be working against yourself so often. So you start with the why, then we use our tools to help you figure out the where, when, and how.
Well said. Well said. Yes. And that's why we say swap till you drop.
Exactly.
Swap till you drop. So, but now you mentioned the vacation rental. You are able to use that? I thought 1031 you were not. Am I?
No, you absolutely can't. So there's a misnomer that a lot of people have, not just with vacation rentals, but just in everything, because the IRS calls these things like kind exchanges. And so a lot of people think, well, if I have a condo, I got to buy a condo. Single family home. That's not it at all. The IRS uses actually two phrases. Like kind, which is defined as simply being real estate of any type. Any type of real estate is like kind to any other type of real estate. The other term that they use to qualify for the 1031 exchange is qualified use. Qualified use means that it is used for productive use in investment. So a property that qualifies for a 1031 exchange is any type of real estate as long as it is used for investment. So it's really broad, right?
Yeah.
Now, let's take a look specifically at vacation rentals. Why did I buy that vacation rental? Well, if I bought it simply for my family to use and I never try to rent it, I don't generate income from it, I don't list it on my Schedule E or my Schedule C. Did I buy it for investment? No. So that's not qualified use. That wouldn't count. But what about a vacation rental where I set it up as a business on a Schedule C, where I make it available for rent year round? I collect rents. I declare rents on my income taxes. I pay tax on those rents. I have vendors that help me maintain the property. And if that property is ever not available, not rented, I go use it for a weekend. Or I use it a couple weeks a year. Or I use it 10% of the number of days it's actually rented. Or, and this one's great but funny but true, whenever I go visit my property, I take a can of paint and a hammer because all of those things we just mentioned qualify as reasons why you can stay in the property and have it still be considered an investment property. So, yes, yeah, as a matter of fact, you can even get second home financing for a vacation rental as an investment. And that's perfectly fine with the IRS. Now, that's huge. Why? Because
Yeah,
second
it
home
is.
financing is typically advantageous interest and lower down payment.
Yeah. Yeah, you just got to know what to ask for, right?
So the opportunity for vacation rentals in the 1031 market, pretty big.
So as far as what they're going to invest in, you've talked about some things. You and I talked also how, I do syndications and joint ventures. I guess they could invest in either of those things as well. Why don't you talk on those
Right.
specifics?
So another part of where I'm at in my life cycle as an investor is I wake up one day, Jenny, and I'm really tired. And I don't know why I'm tired, but I'm tired. And then halfway through the morning, I realize it's because I'm on my seventh tenant call of the day. Someone can't pay rent. Someone's got a mouse in the laundry room. Someone's sink isn't working. And I go, wait a minute, why? There's that why question. Why am I spending my life chasing tenants? I want to start to simplify. Maybe it's just age. I'm wanting to start to make my income more passive. Well, syndications, Delaware statutory trusts, larger properties you buy portions of rather than the whole thing, managed properties, those are all great opportunities to stay invested in real estate and get all the benefits of amortization of the loan, depreciation, appreciation, cash flow, and yet keep your effort to a minimum. So that's the goal with those types of things. Now, syndications are a unique animal. They're not new on the block. As a matter of fact, we used to get our start, the common term was used more for horse racing. Secretariat was a syndicate. Someone owned the horse, but they sold shares of the horse. And then the people that owned the shares of that horse would get the income and the benefits from owning that horse. In the early 2010 issues, someone thought that was a cool phrase to coin for someone who buys a big multifamily apartment and starts to sell membership in the general partnership that owns it. It's absolutely accurate. It's beautiful. It works. And now that's what people think of when they hear the word syndication. So it sounds like it would be perfect for a 1031 exchange because it's real estate. It's going to be passive. It's everything I checks off all my boxes. Here's the problem. When you buy a membership interest in a partnership that owns a big piece of real estate, you're not actually buying real estate. And remember, the 1031 is like, kind, and qualified use. So you actually have to purchase real estate, not an interest in an entity that owns real estate. So it causes all kinds of problems with that. Doesn't work. Well, some bright folks a few years ago figured out that, well, wait a minute, I'm a syndicator and I want this person's money. So what if I just sold them a percentage of the real estate itself? and they're a tenant in common with me. So they own the real estate, I own the real estate, but as part of them buying it from me, they agree to cooperate with me. They agree to indemnify me. They agree to go along with the same terms as all the other investors. The difference is they own the real estate. Well, all of a sudden that opens the door, and now it qualifies for a 1031 exchange. So you can sell that duplex in Omaha and go buy a percentage of a piece of property you're selling shares of as a syndication. So as a 1031 mechanism, it works great.
It does. And there's a DST you mentioned, and that's another option that's a little bit different as well, right?
Yeah, Delaware statutory trusts, they're called that because they're a form of a trust that's taken out in, you guessed it, Delaware. That's the only magical thing about them. That and the fact that in 2004, the IRS officially blessed them as replacement properties for a 1031 exchange. So even though you're not actually buying real estate, you're buying a membership interest in the trust, the IRS says, that's okay, we'll count that. I mean, who can figure why, but they did. And so that's great. So you can sell again that duplex in Cincinnati and go buy a Delaware statutory trust that happens to be an Amazon distribution center in Tampa. And you will continue to defer all your tax. These are very stodgy, very slow moving types of investments. They're not the sexy, high risk, high return things, but usually our folks, and quite honestly, me, as I start to enter the next phase of life, we're more interested in stability and safety than we are chasing the return. So, in one sense, the DSTs act exactly like a syndication with less of a return, less of a risk, less of a hassle trying to make the structure work.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So they're usually buying something more class A or B where there's not going to be a lot of value add component. Just to explain that a little bit more, which is, yeah, what you were saying.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not going to have
yeah.
that
Because value
additional.
add's always been the juice of the syndication, hasn't it? You got to
Yeah.
find the distressed properties, add value, and bring in the investors to do the value add. DSTs typically are more marketed after the value add has occurred. And all that's happened is the sponsor of these is basically holding them with the intent of in 5 to 7 years, when financing turns, when the depreciation schedule adjusts, and they sell them to the Minneapolis City Firefighters Fund or a hedge fund, that kind of a large player. When
Right.
that happens, then you own your share, you get to 1031 back out. Again, keeping that tax deferred because our goal is to keep that compounding effect of the deferred tax as long as we can.
Right. Yeah. And that's where the magic is. So, I did not think to bring this up before we started recording, but are you familiar with the 1033, the eminent domain version?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, when I first moved to Florida, we dealt with hundreds of these because the city of Cape Coral, which is where I was in a massive expansion mode. And they were also very aggressive and very greedy. And so we had to deal with a lot. Now, there's two ways that this type of thing can happen. The 1033 exchange is actually what occurs when you are actually being taken over under eminent domain or you have a catastrophic loss. And with the 1033 exchange, you don't need someone like me. You don't have to have a qualified intermediary. You simply have to document that the property was taken from you or that it was lost casualty wise, And then you have, I believe it's up to 2 years to buy new property and document that. So it's actually pretty loose, free and loose how you do that. The 1031 exchange, though, exists before that happens when you negotiate with the municipality and agree with them. Instead of, saying, forget you, come and take me if you can, you say, fine, I'll agree to what you're offering. In that case, because it's voluntary, quotes, right? Because it's voluntary, that's when you have to do the 1031 exchange. And then you have to use someone like me as a qualified intermediary.
So, and I don't know if you remember that's I've done eminent domain most of my life. And I did a presentation actually on this a few months back to my peers, and it was a tool that a lot of people did not realize was available. And it's so cool that Cape Coral, city of Cape Coral, was where you learned that, because I was down in Broward County
Okay.
where I was most of my career in eminent domain. And so Cape Coral's right there. But we could not find any good examples of people that used it much. But you're going to be a wealth of knowledge on a couple technical questions I need to get back with them on, it sounds like. But the key to what you're saying, though, I would say, since some of the listeners may be in eminent domain or getting impacted, is that you must tell the condemnor what is going on. And there's probably some triggers, since you would be under threat of condemnation alone, which may make it so that you do or don't have to have that intermediary. But the key that I'm trying to get at is that the check has to be written differently, potentially. And the money
Yeah.
needs to go into different accounts. So you need to make sure you don't screw it up. You need to be
Yeah. If you're doing
upfront.
the if
Yeah.
you're doing the 1031 exchange where it's quote voluntary, although they've still threatened you, they most cities, and you can tell me this is your experience too, they always like to try the nice way for a
Well,
couple
we have to
reasons.
have good faith negotiations.
Right. And you've got to have good faith negotiations. Plus, a lot of times it's going to be cheaper to buy if you make friends first. And it's certainly going to take a lot less legal cost. So if it's simply the talk that we may have to do and eminent domain proceedings against you, and you negotiate and decide to sell to that entity for X number of dollars, that triggers the 1031. And the most important thing with a 1031 exchange is you cannot touch the money. It has to go to the qualified intermediary. With a 1033 exchange, that ship has sailed. They're taking it from you. You may sign a piece of paper before the legal proceedings happen, but it was done under threat. And in that case, you receive the check and you've got the freedom then to take 2 years to reinvest that.
Yeah, important differentiation. But all right. So, what else should we touch on before we wrap this up?
Oh, we traveled some good ground here. I, the thing that most people, well, actually, this week I'm getting a lot of calls with this question. I don't know if it's worth it to do a 1031 exchange. I don't even know if it qualifies. I've just heard of it. What do I need to do? Well, the first thing you've got to do is educate yourself because, like the takeaway says, and we keep coming back to that. This is a long game, and if you plan it right, you will reap the harvest for a long, long time. And that harvest is tax dollars in your pocket invested for you. It's certainly easy enough to do a 1031 exchange where all you do is sell and buy a piece of property, but it's so much better if you can take a look at where you are, where you want to be, why you want to get there, and why you want to leave where you are, and then plot the course that's going to get you there while keeping the tax dollars in your pocket every time. My best work is done when I educate people ahead of time. And it's so much more fun because I feel like we both win.
So, talk about the deadlines, though.
Right. So The deadline for a specific 1031 exchange is very tight. You only have 45 days after the date of closing your sale to identify your potential replacement property. So I can just about guarantee you that if you sell your property and then you say, okay, Dave, we're ready to go. I'm looking at brownstones in New York, multifamilies in San Diego, some commercial in Chicago. We're ready to go. And I'm just like, that person is going to fail because they've got too much that they're trying to analyze in too short of amount of time. So when should that have started? 6 months ago, where you figure out, because remember, the 1031 lets you go into any type of real estate anywhere in the country. So way before you sell, you need to be figuring out, where is it I want to reinvest? Start to get to know that market. What do I want to reinvest in? Start looking at those properties to see what the pricing trends are. So that when your property sells, you're ready to pull a trigger. So key. You've got 180 days to close. That's not so bad. It actually feels kind of easy. And it is, yes, most times. But for that person, remember the very first example I used of that person who's looking at a new roof or some big, heavy capital expense items? One of the things they will love to do before prices got way out of hand is move into new construction. So they'll go to a builder and they will go under contract for a house that's not going to be done for 3 or 4 or 5 months. Well, that's perfectly fine. And think about what that does for their 1031. In theory, that means they're going to get like 5 or 6 months of free appreciation before they even have to take title because they're going into contract. Well, actually, be more like a year. They're going into contract 6 months before they sell their old property. And then they've got another 6 months to close on it. So, in theory, you could get a year of appreciation. I say theory because it doesn't always work that way, but you get the point. Here's where the 180 days becomes tricky. If you go to builder school, they have a specific course that they teach you on calendars. And in their school, every month has 45 days. So when they tell you, I'm just teasing, when they tell you, oh, yeah, it's going to be done in 4 months, you better add two to that because they don't have a clue. And of course, you and I both know little things like Helene and Milton and Katrina can all come to visit. And then it's like, and the IRS doesn't care one bit. That 180 days, you got to take title to the property. So new construction, great for a 1031, but make sure that your builder pinky swears that they're going to be done in time.
Yeah, yeah, that can get messy for sure. But yeah, the timing can be critical. In fact, what happened for my first one, I was one of those that had an old condo, made 100,000 on it, and I thought for sure I was going to get one of my replacement properties, and I ended up having to do a lazy 1031 because all three fell through. I really thought that I was good, especially for the safety backup I had, which was a syndication. But
Uh, well, let's talk about that. Tell us what you mean by a lazy 1031.
so what I ended up doing, since all three of my replacements did not work, was I went ahead into a cost segregation study on another property where I was able to capture a lot of depreciation that offset my gain so that it was a wash on my taxes.
That's exactly right. Vacation rentals will also, because they're considered active participation activity, will get you more depreciation as well. The cost segregation to unlock that bonus depreciation and reduce the time scale can be huge
Yeah.
when you get stuck just like you did. Because the greatest fear that our clients have, and they will say this, and I have to beat them with a wet noodle. I don't want to get pressured into buying a property I don't want. And my response is, well, no, duh. Why would you ever buy a property you don't want? Because you know what, in my life, the properties that have killed me have not been the ones that I did not get. It's not the deals I lost out on that have hurt. It's the deal I got that I shouldn't have.
Yeah.
And people have this fear that if I start at 1031, I'm going to end up buying a property I don't like. Well, no. First of all, there's no penalty for starting and not completing a 1031. So start your 1031. If you can't find properties you like, don't turn in a 45-day list. You get your money back on day 46. You pay the same tax you would have at the same time you would have. No harm, no foul. So your only penalty is you're not keeping the compounding going. Now, in your case, you'd already named replacements. So you had this other negative against you, which was that if you didn't buy one of them, your QI had to hold the proceeds till day 180. And boy, does that stink, right?
Yeah.
People call me so many names, but it's not my fault. And the IRS requires that.
Yeah.
So what you did though was fine, let them do that, but then you did the cost seg. So even though you lost the compounding of the tax, the compounding of it, you at least didn't have to pay it. So if you start and stop at 1031, if you make sure you buy a good one, or if you let it go and do a cost segregation, there's never a reason to do a bad 1031. I'm so glad you brought that up because that's huge.
Because what?
Because that's huge.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
To
it is.
eliminate the fear of I'm going
Um,
to do something wrong that's
and
going to
and I
hurt me.
actually recommend that you try to get your replacement under contract before you close on yours. I had built in a couple extensions, and fortunately, my buyer was also in a 1031, so they totally understood it. But still, yeah, I felt bad because they wanted to move into the property. They wanted to move into it temporarily while they fixed it up, and their daughter had a baby. Anyway,
Right. You know, one of the greatest opportunities for small investors right now is going to be lease options.
oh yeah,
You've got a tenant and that, or a lease option, or selling the property to your tenant. I used to do lease option to corporate relocators in Denver all the time. And it was wonderful because they weren't sure they were going to end up staying. They
right.
weren't sure, but they were great tenants with plenty of money to rent. So I would take them shopping and I would say, if you stay, pick out the property you want. I'll buy it. I'll lease it to you. We'll escalate the rent this much each year. 3 years, you get an option to buy the property for X% right now or above right now. They do it every time. So I always had a built-in buyer, and it was beautiful. Those people that are renting to starter type homes to tenants have an opportunity now to go to those tenants and say, would you be interested in buying this property? And if they do that, now the seller, the landlord, can do a 1031 exchange so easily because that tenant can adjust their time to wait till they find their perfect property. And they're not going to be displaced, like you just said. So, and whenever in history our renting population has had trouble buying houses, what happens? The government intervenes with first home purchasing programs, with all kinds of stuff. What's going to happen soon if houses don't become affordable? There's going to be incentive programs. And again, everybody that is an investor in starter family homes is going to have the opportunity to work with their tenant And I think that's such a great win-win for society because we're able to help us as landlords make more money. We're able to help our tenants stay in place and start their own homeownership journey. There's just a lot of good about that. One of the few times when I will thank the government for something.
Yep. Yeah, very true. Very true. All right. Well, we need to wrap it up. Why don't you tell everybody the takeaway one more time? Just
we've
because it's important.
we've said it so many different ways, but from my industry, the takeaway is that you need time on your side because time is what's allowing you to keep that tax deferred and make the money for yourself. And that's what's going to reap the benefits of wealth at the end because you're shutting the back door of taxes today.
All right. Okay. Like I ask everybody, is there a pivotal person or event that brought you to where you are today or that is driving you towards a certain goal?
The way you just said it solidified it in my mind. It was an early date night in 1995 at Barnes& and Noble as two people named Dave and Vicky were having coffee. And we said, let's sail away. How can we do that? How can we make that money? And someone said, and I'm not going to say that her name was Vicky, but someone said, let's just become real estate investors. It'll be easy. And from that day forward, that's what we did. My wife, the amazing Vicky Foster. People ask me, what's one thing you'd change about your marriage of 38 years? I'd only change it so that it could be 40. She is my center point. She challenges me. She blesses me. She walks with me in our faith. And she's a heck of a card player.
Nice. Well, that's terrific. Okay. So you get to tell her you nominated her, or I can call and tell her that you nominated her, whatever you choose, and then
She
ask.
won't believe it for me. I'll have to let you do that.
And if she comes on the show, she's promoted as a pivotal person. She's forever on our newsletter as a pivotal person and gets a lapel pin that says she's a pivotal person. So that's how we have fun and find the pivotal people in the world. So that's great. I'm glad to hear it. And it's so nice. I hear the wife or husband occasionally, but not my cat is going to interrupt here. Not as much as you might think. So I'd love to hear it. So terrific. And so why don't you go ahead and tell people how they can reach you? And remember, some people can't. You need to. They won't be
Sure.
looking at show notes.
Yeah, it's actually kind of easy because 1031 is the number of the federal statute. So if you just think of the number 1031, and if you go to the 1031investor.com, all of our 78, 79 part YouTube series on all the things you need to educate yourself, calculators, opportunities to talk to us. We have truly made this an education site where we can walk alongside you as you learn and grow as a real estate investor. The 1031investor.com.
Very good. Very good. All right. And we will put that in the show notes. And I thank you so much for coming on. It was good. I think we covered everything, right? Hopefully. Otherwise, well, call Dave. He
There
can
you go. Great to be with you.
Thank you.